SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome. So, we will continue our discussion on the National Mineral Policy, and we have just seen what are the different aspects or the critical or the points on which the National Mineral Policy must address, so that it remains as a document where all the issues have been addressed and can be referred to whenever there is a need and there are legal and political issues. And just on that backdrop, let's just browse through the National Mineral Policy of India. This is the policy which we have been revising and reformulating this policy for a good number of years. I will not go into the very details of it. The National Mineral Policy is available on the site of the Ministry of Mines, Government of India, for a detailed reading and to look at the different aspects that it covers. So, without getting into the history of it, so there are also acts which are very much a part of it or have been subsidiary to the National Mineral Policy, like the Mines and Minerals Regulation and Development Act, MMRD Act of Government of India. So, when we were discussing about this classification of the mineral resources, so you could see here that the Schedule A, Schedule B and Schedule C. So, Schedule A is exclusively by the state: coal, iron ore, oil, manganese, chrome, gypsum, sulfur, and that means this has to be done by the state, means actually it is the government. And copper, lead and zinc, molybdenum. Of course, in the recent past there has been quite a lot of restructuring and taking over of many of the statutory bodies by private owned companies, but if we do not go into the details of that. So, these are the materials. For example, coal in India is not mined by any private owned company, it is by the Coal India Limited, and the iron ore trading and oil, as we know, is their exclusive right, and initially, and with later on some of the private companies also coming. Schedule B to be progressively state owned, all other minerals except minor minerals. Schedule C are the minor minerals ordinarily to be developed by private sector. So, the Schedule A is important. So, for example, even atomic energy mineral like uranium or like the rare earths resources which are available like the monazite sand in the sea beaches. So, these are all to be owned by the government. Their exploitation has to be done by government agencies. And the objective of the National Mineral Policy of India, that India is endowed with lots of mineral resources, and at this present we are not very sure whether we have been able to explore the mineral to the fullest extent, or we have been able to discover mineral deposits keeping in pace the rate of discoveries by many other developed countries in the world. So, the objective is definitely to explore for mineral wealth both in land and offshore. Development of mineral resources taking into account the national and strategic considerations, ensure adequate supply and best use, keeping in view the present need of and the future requirement, and promoting the necessary linkages for smooth and uninterrupted development of mineral industry. Here, even though the mineral industry is being taken as a standalone industry by its own right as a mineral industry, it definitely has a linkage with other related industry where the downstream processes are carried out or many of the technologies are developed. So, this necessary link has to be promoted, although it should be in such a way that any of the shocks that is coming into the related industry should not affect the mineral industry. Promote research and development in mineral sector. This is one of the major objectives of the Indian National Mineral Policy for the exploration of mineral resources, to use the state of the art technology and promote research. Ensure establishment of appropriate educational and training facilities for human resource development to meet the manpower requirement in the mineral sector, which is one of the very important aspects. And minimize adverse effects of mineral development. Here the environment comes to consideration, that all the adverse effect that is caused by mining have to be mitigated or minimized, or has to be seen to it that they do not adversely affect the environment. So, that is the reason why many of the mining projects sometimes cannot come into operation, because objections raised on the basis of seriously or adversely affecting the environment. And the ensure conduct of mining operations. Here the issues such as safe mining and mining with adoption of all the safety measures and all other hazards, and the safe mining operations have to be ensured. And some of the issues which were also there before in the policy, which one can see in details. Initially the policy was not quite encouraging for foreign investors to come and to carry out exploration and the exploitation activities, but of late there has been quite a lot of the policies have been liberalized, or the national mineral policy was laid out so that it invites the foreign investors. So, that is how we could see some of the companies, multinational companies like De Beers or Phelps Dodge, BHP, Billiton, and many of the other oil companies also coming and investing in the Indian mineral sector. So, some of the shortcomings of the national mineral policy could be seen in this way. The prospectors were not allowed to survey large areas before fixing targets. The area ceiling not in line with international norms. 25 square kilometer prospecting license is inadequate for airborne geophysics and geochemical prospecting. Linkage between reconnaissance permit, exploration license and mining lease not transparent, that was still being in review. Rates of mineral royalty, though not very high, still not attractive to investors. In this we also, while we are discussing about the taxes, that in terms of royalty and the other type of tax that the mineral agencies have to pay to the government is known as cess, which is essentially the component of the tax which is recovered from the mineral with the agency which does the exploitation. It is towards all other types of things like infrastructure development, general development of the societal, addressing many of the societal issues, and all these included is taken as another tax as called as cess. So, two of the mineral taxes which are in vogue in the in India are the two which are royalty and cess. So, the rates that are fixed sometimes may not be very attractive to investors, and the scopes for joint ventures in large scale exploration should be encouraged, although it has come of late, which as you can discuss, we will be discussing in a little while, that in whichever the private sectors are generally are encouraged to invest in the mineral sectors, and there are certain situations in which the private sector can be asked or encouraged to join hands and with the public private partnership kind of collaboration in the mineral sector itself. And one of the things cited as a shortcoming is a no clear cut policy on infrastructure and cost sharing between lessee and the beneficiaries. It lacked uniform policy in respect of minor minerals, like these are the things which are which are extensively used as polishing the decorative stones, granites and marble with high export potential are not existing. mining still not considered as a major economic activity, but I think these are some of the shortcomings which were there initially when the national mineral policy was formulated. So we can have a look some of the brief points, the salient points of the national mineral policy of India. Right at this point of time, then there is also a latest version, the latest some of the modifications, but if we look at this, the national mineral policy 2008, we could see the salient points that the first mandate of the national mineral policy is to encourage scientific prospecting using the state of the art technology in a time bound manner. Means it is kind of fixing up some time based targets, keeping in mind that the country is underexplored. There are lots of scope of discovery of many of the important mineral commodities in which there is short supply, or the reserve in the Indian context are quite low, and most of the requirement are met through imports. So there should be a time bound. So that's how there are many recent programs which have been initiated by the government for rigorous and more extensive exploration of the different parts of the Indian subcontinent, and the whole policy is that more scientific state of the art methods should be utilized. For example, when we are discussing about the remote sensing technique, the latest remote sensing technique, which is the airborne spectroradiometric methods, which does the which says the hyperspectral method, which does whose data which produces very good quality spectral data on the land surfaces of different characteristics, which would be far more useful in exploration of mineral deposits than with conventional satellite imageries, or the satellite imageries which were obtained by the older spectrometers like the MSS or the other satellites. One of the another important policy of the national mineral component of the national mineral policy is to see to it that it does zero waste mining has to be imposed or has to be encouraged, so that it helps in proper utilization of the reserve that we have. In addition to that, the sustainability issue is also addressed. Maintenance of proper inventory of the reserves and resources. So the Indian Bureau of Mines is primarily assigned with the job of documentation of all the inventory of the mineral resources in terms of reserves and resources, and also is the regulatory body to look into the mining practices, safe mining practices, and the zero waste mining, that is one of the policies. And Geological Survey of India being the prime agency which is involved in exploration of the country for mineral resources. Project affected population to be compensated as per the National Rehabilitation and Resettlement Policy, which is one of the important aspects of mining, because whenever there is a mining, there are the local population sometimes have to be moved, and so in that process, if there are any kind of any way that the local population are affected, they have to be properly compensated following the National Rehabilitation and Resettlement Policy. This point also is which we have discussed before, the mineral sector to be considered as a standalone industry activity, although linkages with related industries has to be established, and anytime there is a downward curve, what we said as a shock, or it could be a normal downward curve in the activity of any other particular industrial sector which is dependent on mineral resources. So the activity of the mineral resources should not get affected through that. So the growth of the mining industry should continue rather unaffected by any downward curve in the growth of any other related industry. So interests of mineral rich states to be protected. Here is the issue of center and state relationship. Any particular state which is more mineral rich or is producing much more in terms of number of commodities or the value of commodity, so their interest has to be safeguarded. The mineral concession rule, that is the of 1960, in granting this RP, which is the reconnaissance permit, or PL is prospecting license, ML is mining lease, and mineral conservation and development rules of mineral conservation to hold. So that means we do exploitation in such a way that we also think of the future, and here also in some of the cases this conservation necessarily mean augmentation of the existing mineral resources, and augmentation necessarily mean further exploration and extension of reserves in the existing mines that are operating right now. And so these are all, as we have discussed before, that any particular mining activity when it starts, the further exploration work continues till even the time that the mine is coming to a state of closure. So states to facilitate and regulate exploration and mining activities, government agencies to for development of strategic minerals, and private sector to be main source of investment in future. The concept of large area prospecting license to be introduced for completion of reconnaissance work, which we just pointed out as one of the shortcomings of the previous policy in terms of the area coverage that is given to the reconnaissance work. So that is now being somehow is taken care of, and the concept of large area prospecting license is being implemented, being introduced for completion of the reconnaissance work. So in fact it is actually targeted that it is kind of with a very short or as early as possible to complete the reconnaissance work of the mineral exploration. And in this context you could possibly would remember that in the concept of the geochemical survey of the whole country, or geochemical generation of geochemical anomaly data for the whole country has been taken up into almost nearing completion. And when the whole concept is that if we could have geochemical anomaly on a local scale, we could also produce geochemical anomaly on a much larger magnitude covering the whole country when samples are taken almost at the intervals of 1 + 1 square kilometer. And not only geochemical, so under these kind of work, this kind of objectives, even the airborne geophysical anomaly covering the entire country, and all these kind of processes have been initiated at different stages, and some of them are already available. Export of minerals in value added form, so it will always be encouraged if the value could be added, so that its quality improves and the export is promoted. Domestic mineral industry to attune to international economic scenario, which is a complicated issue, but it has to be somehow seen that the domestic industry, the mineral industry, is in perfect coordination or perfect tune with the international economic scenario in terms of demand. Design of fiscal policy for promotion of mineral exploration and development, so more of financial assistance to companies, which is not very well laid out clearly as of now. Increase R&D efforts in the mineral and mining sectors, including deep sea mining and production of materials of high purity. Deep sea mining is also one of the agenda, one of the points on which the we as a country, we aspire to be an active in this deep sea mining, because as I said initially that possibly the point will come when we have to turn our attention towards the seabed for meeting most of our demands for metals. And we have seen that there are some materials like the manganese nodules which occur in the ocean, which occur on the ocean floor in different geographical areas, which are also rich sources of nickel and cobalt. Okay, so that was the situation about the macroeconomic policy as far as an individual country is concerned. We of course have to be brief, and because there could be these issues or these subjects are such that it could possibly form a full lecture series as far as the mineral economics is concerned, the level at which it is practiced, the extensive modeling and the different types of analysis that is made on the data on mineral resources, production, consumption, demand, international trade, and so on. So let's see one of the aspects of the macroeconomics of mineral resources when it involves the whole world. And we know that the seabed is endowed with mineral resources. It is not only mineral resources, the sea is a source of livelihood in many other ways, offering many biological resources and so many things which we cannot discuss right now. We will only be concerned about the law of the sea when it applies to exploitation of the mineral resources. So the seabed is endowed. Now the question is that whom does the resource belong? It belongs to the entire human population, the entire world, the entire mankind. So if it is so, then it also needs to be some policies have to be laid out for its exploitation, so as to avoid any international conflict or confrontations. So it has been evolving for quite some time. There were many meetings to evolve a policy, uniform policy acceptable to all the countries across the world. And what is presently available as a document is the law of the sea, is as per the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS 1982. And right at this point, possibly about more than 90 countries have been signatory to this particular document, and it is to be implemented. There are many issues. For example, whenever we are talking about the resources of the seabed, then naturally the countries which are landlocked, which do not have any coastline, also comes, and whether they could have any share of this particular resources or not, that is although it needs to be addressed, but has no such clear cut consensus is seem to be achieved so far, although things have been laid out. So the law of the sea will consider certain things, that as far as the coastline or those countries who have a coastline have to, this kind of restrictions or the stipulations could be made. What could be considered as internal water or territorial water, and the contiguous zone and the exclusive economic zone in which the country has full a country will be given right to explore and exploit whatever resources are available within that particular zone, the continental shelf, high seas, and the international seabed. So this particular diagram would make it clear. It's a sketch, as you could see here. This is the mainland, and this is the dotted line represents the sea surface. And as per the convention, the first 12 nanometer from the shore will be considered as the territorial sea, in which the country has a full right of itself, and any no element or no foreign element is allowed in that. And another 12 nanometer 12 nautical miles is considered as labeled as the contiguous zone. And continental shelf, we all know as geologists that with a very shallow slope which extends for a variable width from the shore in terms of tens of kilometers from the shore, and it is the continental shelf. And then the continental slope, which is which actually demarcates the boundary of a particular continent here, and this is a very high slope, and these are all with many types of features which you have read in our physical geology textbooks. And this is the continental rise, and this is the deep sea bed. So this 200 nautical mile from the shore is defined as the exclusive economic zone, and then this is the deep sea bed. So any country, so it will also be very interesting to see that many of the countries which are very close neighbors, like India, Sri Lanka, or India, Pakistan, or many other countries, So, they would be even be shorter than 200 nautical miles from their respective boundaries. So, they will have to come to a kind of agreement and demarcate the areas of in the distance up to which they will be exerting their exclusive economic right, and these are the exclusive economic zone. And so, the internal water that flows automatically from sovereignty exercised over the land territory, territorial sea up to 12 nautical miles or sea miles, contiguous zones, the territory outside the territorial sea where coastal states may exercise the control that necessary to punish or prevent infringements, like that I was telling about foreign elements. Not getting into the details of it. So, up another 12 nautical miles, that means from the shore to 24 nautical miles is the contiguous zone, and the different jurisdictional zones are the exclusive economic zone or the continental shelf, which is a 200 nautical miles, or the end of this shelf, whichever is shorter. The coastal states have the right for the use of the living and non-living natural resources to use the exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf for other economic purposes. The right to construct, authorize and regulate the construction of artificial islands and certain installations and structures. In the exclusive economic zones, all states have freedom to navigation and overflight, as well as freedom to lay submarine cables and pipelines. These are of course not within the, and the continental shelf, it extends to 200 miles from the baseline or to the outer edge of the continental margin, whichever is farther. This is based on the law of the sea convention. So, the important agreements which have been reached in the United Nations conventions on law of the sea, that is, every state has the right to establish the breadth of its territorial sea up to a limit of 12 nautical miles, contiguous zone of 24 nautical miles from the shoreline for the purpose of enforcement of customs, fiscal, immigration and sanitary laws, EEZ up to 200 nautical miles from the shoreline for purpose of exploring and exploiting, conserving and managing the natural resources of the seabed and the ocean floor subsoil thereof beyond the limits of the national jurisdiction are the common heritage of mankind. So, here anything which is beyond the 200 nautical miles will have to be under some kind of an international statutory body. So, here comes the creation of the body, which is the International Seabed Authority. So, the International Seabed Authority has been formed to look into or to regulate the exploration and exploitation of resources which are beyond the exclusive economic zone. So, there are rules and regulations which have been laid out, that if a particular country, so it is almost like in a way very much in line with in a particular government, when any particular agency, mineral agency, wants to do exploration work or mining work, as it has to apply for the permit and for the license, and the government grants that particular permit or the license under certain restrictions and clauses guided by the national mineral policy and other clauses of the law of the land. This is exactly in more or less the similar way the International Seabed Authority will be the or is the agency who will grant permit to a particular country for delineating the particular area in terms of several hundreds of square kilometers or so. There are some specific rules, and the country which will be doing the exploration and the exploitation have to pay in terms of money to that particular seabed authority, and will be allowed to exploit, and then the part of it also has to be the particular country, whatever is the area that is granted, it will be allowed to exploit a particular part of it, not the whole, and for the rest of it to be left for future. And there are so many other detailed clauses there in that, which we'll be possibly discussing later in our classes. Without getting into much, of course, there is no much of a scope of a very detailed discussion on the law of the sea, but these are some of the salient features, and this law of the sea is an example of what we can have as a policy, as an international policy, like what we have a national mineral policy in a national perspective. Thank you very much. We will again continue discussion on mineral economics. Okay.